Welcome back. The beginning of any new presidential term, it's always this whirlwind, isn't it? Changes happen fast.
They really do. And today we're digging into, well, a particularly intense period, the first 100 days of Trump's second term.
We got some interesting material to work with here. There's a briefing from Decryptdaily laying out the key actions.
And an analysis piece from Boston University that looks at the impact and draws some comparisons to his first term.
Right, so our mission, as always, is to pull out the really crucial insights. What actually happened? What effects are we seeing? How does it compare?
Let's jump in. I mean, the first thing that strikes you is probably the sheer speed, the volume of action.
Yeah, especially with executive orders. It seems like they came out thick and fast.
Absolutely. The sources point to a real focus on a few core areas right away. Immigration, definitely.
Okay, immigration.
Economic policy adjustments and rolling back environmental regulations.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Okay, so concrete examples. We saw things like barring asylum claims at the southern border.
That's right. And the attempt, which importantly got blocked by the courts, to end birthright citizenship.
Okay, that legal challenge is key.
Yeah.
And declaring a border emergency, that was in there too.
Yes. And on the environment front, reaffirming the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, that was prominent.
Plus, opening up areas in Alaska,
Yeah.
the wilderness there,
Yeah.
for oil drilling. It felt like a very rapid sequence of pretty major policy decisions.
It certainly suggests, a clear intent to hit the ground running with a specific agenda. Executive orders are, well, they're a fast way to make changes.
At least initially. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it, about maybe unintended side effects when things move that quickly.
That's a fair point. Speed versus deliberation. And sticking with immigration for a sec, the sources called the moves aggressive.
Aggressive how? Beyond the executive orders.
Yeah, talk of mass deportations, really tightening border security across the board. It seems like a very comprehensive push.
And as you said, the courts are already stepping in. Like
Yeah.
with birthright citizenship, that seems like a pattern that might continue.
It often is. The legal system becomes this immediate check or balance on executive actions, especially controversial ones.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. That name certainly caught my eye.
Yeah, it's memorable.
What's the stated goal there? What's it supposed to do?
Well, according to the sources, the main aims are 1, streamline federal agencies, cut costs.
Okay, efficiency. Makes sense from the name.
But also, and this is significant, making it easier to replace career civil servants with political appointees.
That sounds like it could be impactful.
Yeah.
Reshaping the workforce itself.
It could be. Historically, moves like that, trying to quickly politicize the civil service, they often face resistance. And you get concerns about losing, institutional memory, expertise.
Could be a real source of friction down the line. Okay, what about the economy, fiscal policy? Any big moves early on?
Seems like a continuation, mostly. Investigating trade practices, that was back on the agenda.
A familiar theme.
Definitely. And this idea for an external revenue service, specifically for tariffs.
An external revenue service. So, like separate from the IRS. Just for tariffs.
That's how it sounds, yeah. Maybe designed to handle tariff revenue outside the, let's say, the usual channels. Could change how trade policy works in practice.
Interesting. And other priorities.
Making the previous tax cuts permanent, that was a big one. And renewed talk about tackling the national debt and deficits.
Got it. Okay, military and foreign policy. What stood out there?
Focus on rebuilding the military, boosting recruitment, and notably removing DEI policies.
DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was targeted across the board.
Across government agencies, yeah, and specifically mentioned for the military.
And foreign policy?
Yep.
Anything unusual?
Well, the sources mentioned discussions about acquiring Greenland again.
Greenland, okay. That discussion resurfaced.
And moves aimed at countering Chinese influence, particularly mentioned around the Panama Canal. So some pretty bold, maybe unconventional ideas floating around.
And just to round out the policy areas, environment, we mentioned Paris and Alaska. Any other major rollbacks?
Just a general pattern, really. Reversing regulations on pollution, energy efficiency standards. It confirms that continued direction.
In the DEI rollback, you mentioned in the military context, but it was broader than that.
Yes. The sources indicate it was a wider initiative, targeting those diversity programs in various government sectors. It points to a clear ideological push.
Okay, so a lot happening in just over 3 months. How did all this land? What was the immediate reaction?
Well, no big surprise here. It was deeply polarized. Public opinion split pretty cleanly along party lines.
Republicans generally supportive, Democrats opposed.
Largely, yes. Independents, as usual, were more mixed. But the sources suggest the intensity of the polarization around these specific actions felt particularly high.
More so than usual for early presidential moves.
Perhaps, maybe reflecting just how divided the country is on these specific issues: immigration, government structure, environment.
And the legal challenges we keep mentioning, they were pretty immediate and widespread.
Absolutely. That legal pushback, especially on immigration and the civil service changes, kicked in right away. It suggests, these are going to be ongoing court battles.
Which will obviously shape how these policies actually play out long term.
Exactly. The initial order isn't always the final word.
And the Decryptdaily brief mentioned some local impacts. Something about North Carolina.
Yeah, that was interesting. It highlighted noticeable effects already happening there due to cuts in federal agency funding, research grants, things like that.
So it brings it home, right? These BDC decisions have real, tangible consequences pretty quickly at the local level.
Precisely. Changes in federal spending ripple outwards, affecting communities, jobs, local institutions, sometimes in ways you don't immediately see from a national perspective.
Okay, let's zoom out again. How does this flurry of activity compare to the start of Trump's first term? The Boston University piece touched on this.
Yeah, and this is quite interesting. The observation was that this second term started off, well, more organized.
More organized? How so?
A clearer focus, it seems, on implementing campaign promises rapidly. Maybe less initial turbulence compared to the first time around.
And they attribute that to better planning during the transition, having people ready to go.
Better transition planning and a ready pool of political appointees. That's the phrase used. So the idea is they hit the ground running faster this time.
Got it. So many of the goals might be similar to the first term.
But executed with greater speed and coordination, especially on immigration, deregulation, and that government restructuring piece with DOGE.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we were to sort of summarize the big themes and actions based on everything we've discussed.
Well, you've got immigration, aggressive actions met with immediate legal fights.
Right, then government efficiency.
Yeah.
Creating DOGE, aiming to streamline and shift staffing, sparking political debate.
Yep. Economy and trade. Investigating trade, the tariff proposals, focus on tax cuts, leading to mixed economic forecasts and reaction.
Environment. Continued rollbacks, Paris withdrawal confirmed, prompting legal action and public protests.
And finally, military DEI. Boosting the military while removing diversity initiatives, drawing both praise and criticism.
It really covers a wide swath of policy, doesn't it? And each area seems to have its own set of reactions and challenges already.
It does. It highlights how interconnected these things are and how pushback comes from, lots of different directions, courts, public opinion, even within the government structure itself.
So looking back at just these first 100 days then, what's the main takeaway? What have we learned so far?
Yeah, I think the overwhelming picture is one of really aggressive executive action across the board, swift implementation.
But immediately running into legal roadblocks and, fanning the flames of partisan division.
Exactly. Legal battles and deep, deep partisan divides seem characteristic. And we're seeing, immediate significant impacts, or at least attempted impacts on immigration, how the government itself is structured, and environmental rules.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive for today. It's clear those first 100 days were incredibly active, a really rapid pace, a broad scope of executive actions.
Definitely. Reshaping government, decisive policy moves, all happening against this backdrop of, intense debate and legal scrutiny.
Which leads to the big question, really, for you listening. Given these legal fights, given the polarized reactions we've talked about,
what do you think the lasting impact of these initial moves might actually be? On the administration's path forward and, on the country?
Are there specific things we touched on, maybe DOGE and the civil service changes or the environmental policies, or something else that you think warrant a closer look on your own, something to really mull over?